Hey y'all, we are back in Better Than Ever, day 2 of ABC's 19th annual African Black Coalition Conference. Our theme is to be black and free. If you are tuning in from our keynote speaker, Dr. Charisse Burden-Stelly killed it. You know, I love someone who can really give you key takeaways, something that you can take and work on and really think about, right? Those tidbits, those morsels. So definitely excited to talk to her for our Q&A. To kind of get into some of the morsels as we wait on her to join, I'll say a few quotes. 1, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. As soon as she said that, the chat and hopping was going up because we're like, oh, snap. Like, I've never heard anyone say it like that before. What's some other stuff she said? We cannot let the people who oppress us tell us how to struggle. I really appreciated that because we also had a discussion about reparations, right? So that was one of our key discussions yesterday beyond our keynote, beyond our workshop. So it was really about self-definition, defining what you need for yourself instead of letting other people tell you, being able to articulate that, being able to know if you want financial or social reparations. So again, you know, trying to give you some insight about what we actually talk about during conference. And lastly, all of us are enemies of the people until we prove otherwise. So y'all better put in that work. Prove that you are not an enemy of the people. Now with that, I'm going to go ahead and add Dr. Charisse Burden-Stelly to the live, and we'll get into this Q&A. Okay, just added her. Hey, ma'am.
Hello.
We can hear you. We can see you. Everything looks great. I just wanted to commend you on your keynote today. It was great. I'm so excited to do this IG Live. How did you feel the keynote went?
I thought it was fine. It's always a little bit awkward with, I use 2 laptops. So it's like, yeah. So I thought, I just hope the message resonated with the theme of your conference. And, you never know how people are going to feel with this, radical Black stuff, but that's what we on, and so that we get enough of the liberalism, the conservatism, the niggeratiism, all the time. And so I just always try to offer that alternative perspective because, we got work to do. So yeah. I hope it was okay.
If you saw, people were going up. I definitely appreciate the fact that you are completely, truly honest and you're able to articulate it really well. Like, I don't know if you heard Khalil, he was like, oh, I'm learning new words. I'm over here trying to write some stuff. So to get into our Q&A, I want to go ahead and start off. Again, our conference theme is to be black and free. So our first question is, what does Black freedom mean to you?
I cannot even think about freedom until we get organized, okay? We have to get organized because if we are not organized, if we don't lead with a collective understanding and a collective mentality and a people-centered mentality, then freedom will just mean freedom in the market and individuals' ability to consume or Black excellence, Black luxury, or whatever it is that these folks are doing on social media these days. And so I think it's sort of order of operations. I think let us get organized, and then that is the basis of any conception of freedom that we might have. Because again, when I was talking about freedom dreams earlier, if we don't imagine something else, then everything that we understand to be freedom or liberation will be entrapped in the status quo. So organizing, struggling collectively, engaging in comradely debate, all of those things will help us come up with a conception of freedom that really is rooted in structural transformation and rooted in something different. And so at this moment, freedom means organizing.
For sure. So I know that one of the things that you were talking about earlier was also voting. So I definitely wanted to include that in there, the fact that you can't just vote yourself into freedom because it's still ingrained in that institution of white supremacy, racism, etc. So just letting people know, again, yes, you can vote. Yes, that's helpful. But again, imagining something different and organizing for that is again, order of operations, definitely important. So I know that you do a lot of work on the socialist movement, right? So I wanted to ask, what are some historical connections between the socialist movement and the struggle for Black liberation? And then joined to that, do socialism or communism address barriers to Black freedom?
Well, I only engage socialism as it is connected to Black liberation or African liberation. And so I know that there are many white traditions and many sort of European focused traditions. I don't do that. And so it actually is a little, this is why I'm always confused about when people call like Marxism or socialism or whatever, like white shit, because I came to socialism and to communism through Black people. Through people for whom the Negro question and Black self-determination was central. And so, so in terms of individuals historically, you have like people who are part of like the sort of the Communist Party or the Comintern, like Claudia Jones and Harry Haywood, Otto Weiswood, Richard B. Moore, Louise Thompson Patterson, William Patterson, Esther Cooper Jackson, James Jackson.
That's the names, okay.
Then you have like more sort of either people who are part of other types of Marxists, so whether it's Trotskyists or Maoists or just ecumenical Marxists, so that's people like C.L.R. James. I'm not as conversant in that tradition, but you got, so C.L.R. James is one of them, and then Grace Boggs. She's not Black, but she was the only non-Black person in Toni Cade Bambora's collection called The Black Woman. Okay. So she was somebody who was married, and she was also married to James Boggs, who's also a very important sort of non-CPUSA, like Marxist. Then you have the Black Panther Party, which was more aligned with Maoism. So they were Marxist-Leninists, but also Maoist. And so there's a whole bunch. But more important than those individuals, everything that is important about those individuals is that they were part of parties or they're part of organizations, period. So we need to move away from this sort of great man or great woman understanding of politics and really look at what people were doing. Paul Robeson was in many organizations. Du Bois was in many organizations. Huey P. Newton and them organized, the Black Panther Party. They weren't doing it for clout. They understood the power of collective organizing. Fred Hampton, we can go on and on and on. And so I think that in terms of organizations, you had, Black right organizations that I mentioned earlier, like the African Blood Brotherhood, the Council on African Affairs, there's so many, the National Negro Conference, the National Negro Labor Council. You had the Combahee River Collective, you had the Third World Women's Alliance, you had the African Liberation Support Committee. So there's a whole bunch that are left wing, but that are sort of ideologically diverse. So like pick your poison, right? But the important thing is to build institutions and join organizations and to be part of some sort of collective that is doing stuff, including reading, including studying.
Yes, ma'am. I would.
The revolution, the RUM. So RUM is the Revolutionary Union Movement. So that was in Detroit. So there was like LRUM and FRUM and DRUM. So Revolutionary Union Movement. Gotcha. Shout out to my comrade, my girl Erica. I could see, I can see her comments up. Yeah.
So for everyone who is just joining, make sure that you run this back. She's including a lot of great tips, a lot of great resources. So make sure you go, you do your own research, you find out what these people are about, what movements they were involved in, and hopefully that inspires you to organize as well or join an organization that is already here. We got the African Black Coalition. We have a lot of other
Black Alliance for Peace. That's my organization.
So again, you just talked about Black Alliance for Peace. So let's talk about your current work. How does your current work help to improve or assist in the journey to Black freedom? And you can take this anywhere for real.
Yeah, so I will always consider myself an academic first, not because I think that academia is prior to anything else, but that's because that's how I came to the work. I joined the organization comparatively late. So if you listen to some of my earlier stuff, I talk about how I'm not an organizer or an activist. I don't belong to an organization. I do now, but I'm still learning. And so I would say joining the Black Alliance for Peace is like the best move I ever made, just because it has helped me so much in terms of political education, in terms of what it means to subordinate your own beliefs to a broader set of principles and collective understanding, to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. So for example, like, I'm not big on protests. Like, I'm not a big people person. Maybe cold or hot, like, it's just not my thing. But we organized several protests across our organization against or in solidarity with Haiti, right? In solidarity with the general strike that was happening in February onward of last year. And so it pushes you, like, that's what it means to be, to have discipline and to be part of a collective, is to do things that you wouldn't necessarily do individually, but that are important to moving, contributing to your organization. And so all of that to say, I think that, Black Alliance for Peace, it is out at the forefront of Black internationalist and Pan-Africanist, anti-imperialist political education. And I think that my academic work has informed my work in BAP, and vice versa. My work in BAP has then helped me to be more clear and more committed in my academic work to do things that matter beyond the demands of, the hoops we have to jump through in academia. And so I recommend that all academics join an organization, just because it keeps you grounded and it reminds you of what really matters, because you can get very encapsulated in the ebony tower, and the debates that you think matter really don't matter. So anyway, that was the answer to your question somewhere in there.
It definitely does. And I would like to second the fact that Black Alliance for Peace does a lot of great work. Just collaborating with them on different initiatives, I appreciate all of the time and energy that they really put towards the stuff that matters. So before we conclude, I do have two final questions. The first one is, why is Pan-Africanism integral to addressing the structural and material conditions of the Black community?
Because these are colonial and imperial borders that have been imposed upon us. And make no mistake, the capitalists are internationalists. They are thinking beyond borders. The movement of goods and money and services, that is happening beyond borders. And likewise, we need to understand our plight, our oppression, our struggles, as well as our victories, in terms of what's happening throughout the Black world, or throughout the Pan-African world, so to speak. Pan-Africanism also reminds us that we are colonized. This is an internal colony. What is happening throughout the world is also happening to racialized and oppressed people here in the United States. And also the African continent itself is really important. It is the most resource-rich continent in the world. It is the sort of final frontier of capitalism, so to speak. And so, until Africa is free, no Black people are free, right? The extent to which we are able to have self-determination is very much contingent upon the liberation of the continent itself. So Pan-Africanism.
Absolutely. And we are actually doing a panel on freedom beyond colonial borders. That will be happening today. So for everyone who is tapped in on Hopin and going to our conference, make sure that you tap in, you learn more about that. So last question, what advice do you have for people interested in joining the struggle for Black freedom?
Join a revolutionary, a radical, and grassroots organization and study collectively. And be informed and be abreast of what's happening in the world beyond what the mainstream media is telling you. And so, so that's, anytime anybody asks us this, we're always going to say, join an organization and read, study. Like, that's it. That's where we are. We need to shore up our forces. So and organize.
Definitely. Amazing. I really appreciate this conversation. Again, that keynote was top tier. I really enjoyed it. Again, for everyone who's in the chat, this is only our second day of conference. Okay, so we got workshops, we got panels, we got performances, all this other stuff. So make sure that you tap into that on Hopin, as well as getting on our Instagram, getting engaged, look into these organizations, do your research. I know this is a lot, but run this video back, check your resources, do your research, and we'll see you when we see you. Thank you. I appreciate this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.